Ron. Thank you for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Murray. How you doing?
Good, good. We're in completely different parts of Canada, but it's cool. We've got Zoom technology to support us. So yeah, it's good to chat with you this morning, and appreciate you taking the time and having a willingness to have a conversation with me that others can look in on and see if there's anything that they discover here that resonates with them, speaks to their current experience, or not, as the case may be. So
Sure.
again, my gratitude for you being here this morning.
Oh, happy to be here.
So if you would please, I'd be grateful as a starting point. Could you paint a little bit of a portrait of, where you at before we even talked about the possibilities of engaging in this work together? What has been common in my experience is that there's always change of significance going on with someone, and that created challenges of sorts and brought them to choice points. And so, yeah, if you would, I appreciate anything that you have to share.
Sure. I guess to describe in an overall manner what was happening before I reached out to you is I had embarked on a number of avenues of self-development and at looking at ways of changing how my life was unfolding. We've talked about this, read lots of self-development authors and so on and so forth. And I found myself running up against, we talked about it in our work, running up against a glass wall, continually, not really knowing what the obstacles to change were, why I was repeatedly hitting them, and why I had not had success in getting some of the things done I wanted to because of these blocks. And it was out of that frustration. I was reading an author the other day, and he put forth the notion that using your intellect is often about the worst thing you can do to try to figure these things out. And I was guilty of that. I'm a fairly bright guy. Why the hell can't I figure this out? So it was out of that sort of level of frustration that I first had the idea of reaching out to you. And of course, for full disclosure, we've been friends for decades. So I certainly had maybe a more intimate knowledge of the work you do and who you are as a person. So there was certainly no hesitation once I reached out in deciding to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. My experience is that people arrive for either professional reasons, or they arrive for more personal reasons, or some combination. And just to frame our conversation, could you comment on whether it was one or both or the other that was the catalyst for our working together?
Sure. It was both, and my own personal opinion is they're very difficult to separate. I think any difficulties or any unhappiness or any challenges in the workplace, save having a horrible boss or something, are often things that are going on inside us.
Yeah.
And certainly for entrepreneurs, we've had this conversation in the work that certainly for entrepreneurs, I believe that 90% of your business problems are things within you that you need to learn and discover.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was both professional. Not that there was problems professionally, but I was feeling unfulfilled, and the late middle age or 3/4 age for us question of am I doing meaningful work? And there's just as many personal reasons that I decided to engage in the work.
Yeah, yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, you touch on what has always been my experience, is that there's this track record of all kinds of achievements and creativities and milestones that individuals bring to this point in time, whatever that point in time is for them, and then we embark from there. And
Mm-hmm.
so equally with you and your experience and my experience of you. And so you arrive at a point where you decide there that, bringing someone, albeit someone that I know quite well, into my experience is, could be helpful. Could you touch on that point? I believe that this offers an important window in, because at what juncture does one decide between, what they were doing in other ways, right? Perhaps largely on their own, and that point where, I think that bringing someone in by way of support, guidance, what have you, is the time is now. Could you comment on that, Ron?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a combination of self-awareness and humility, that you get to a point where you go, okay, well, it's blatantly obvious here that what I have been doing is not working, and I happen to know an expert in this field, and so let's just go ahead and put it in the hands of the expert and have the structure and the sounding board and the expertise of someone like you walk me through this. Because we talked about the intellect already. I thought I could figure this out on myself. That was not the case. So it's a combination of frustration and enough self-awareness to go, you know what, let's go get this done with the help of someone who really knows what they're doing.
Well, I appreciate the word humility. How often that word has become relevant to my experience, whether or not, my personal experience, whether or not I could embrace it in that moment was another thing. But to be willing to, in some ways, be a beginner again, to take a look into our experience with fresh eyes. And I wholeheartedly acknowledge you for your willingness to do that. Maybe you could just touch on the fact that I think there will be many entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs visiting, and potentially taking a peek at our conversation. And you've been a long-standing entrepreneur. Could you offer anything as far as change and challenge of the entrepreneur before we get into during our experience?
Right. Well, I think for entrepreneurs, they have to, in my opinion, guard against their natural tendency to tackle problems themselves and get them done. That's a very natural tendency for entrepreneurs. It's probably part of the definition of entrepreneurship. But I think you'll find the most successful and possibly the happiest entrepreneurs also know, when to listen to their CFO or their chartered accountant. They know when to listen to their IT person over a big issue or a big purchase. But we don't really have that yet, that kind of understanding in terms of personal development. And so I would just use the analogy that using someone like Murray is just the same as using a professional in another field, except for it's in your most important field, other than your medical doctor. It's your personal development and happiness and understanding of how to achieve what you want in life. So to any person who's an entrepreneur out there, I would just say, look at it through that lens. You wouldn't ignore the advice of those people. You wouldn't ignore the advice of a physician. And who have you got guiding you through the development and growth of you as a person, which is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So maybe we could just go into the experience itself of working together, two dimensions of it. One is, could you please comment on, what you experienced as far as the how of it? Did you experience process? Did you experience structure? Did you not experience either of those things? What would perhaps a newcomer to this experience be able to anticipate from that standpoint? And then, of course, the other part is you're working with me over a duration of time, and maybe touch on what's it like? What's this guy like? What's it like collaborating with this person?
Right. So to touch on process and structure, it's laid out in a very organized and linear manner. Some of the things you learn aren't linear and aren't necessarily a straight line or a straight line causation. You're diving into motivation and emotional blocks and all kinds of things, but the structure of the course or the work is very organized and very easy to look at the beginning, look at the end, and put your head down and get to work. How easy you breeze through the process, I think, is a very individual thing. Not only does it depend on time available and work habits, but we don't really know how much we have to uncover until we go through it. And as we uncover these things, quite often they need to be talked about, processed, and so at certain points you're going to come to a dead stop because you've uncovered something very important. You've uncovered a deep motivation that you hadn't really thought about before. What I will say is that you are very good at giving time and space when it's needed and giving a little kick in the pants to move on when it's needed. And that's one of your greatest gifts, from my experience.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it's half of an independent course and half of a lectured course with a really good prof, right? There's bits where you go off and you do your own thing and you're writing and thinking and analyzing, and then there's parts where at the end of a block you and I sit down and go through it and analyze it as if I had gone in for office hours with a professor in university. That's it's the structure that I didn't have and the insight that you give that I didn't have trying to do any of this stuff on my own.
Yeah, appreciate that. Did you find, maybe you could comment on, is this about imparting advice? Is this about prescriptions? Is this about admonishments? Is this about judgments? Is this about directions?
No,
Is this
it's
about, how would you characterize that? Because I would have that on my mind if I was visiting.
right. Yeah. No, I think if I have to try to sum it up in a sentence or two, I think it's a structured yet compassionate path to discover yourself. That's what it's really all about. If we were all perfectly put together, we'd all be marvelously happy, incredibly rich, and all of our family would be wonderful to be with at Christmas. And but that happens very, very rarely,
Yeah,
even to good people like you and me.
right.
Um, and so, uh, yeah, it's about discovering what little um, it's about discovering how you get in your own way and how to get out of your own way, and you guide us through that process.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Ron. Yeah, and that portrait you just painted strikes me as it would likely be incredibly boring too. But nevertheless, it definitely those features are attractive.
Right, yeah,
Particularly the Christmas with family part, but I won't.
yeah.
And how about the B part then? Could you maybe paint a little bit of a portrait around? So what's it like to work together? What's it like to collaborate over this process and period of time? What's this guy like?
Well, the collaboration is you have a great deal of uh, sensitivity and insight into people. So we talked about everything in our work together. I never once felt judged or overly uncomfortable. So collaborating with you is really what makes this program tick. And I can't imagine anybody better at it, than what I experienced with you. It's just again, because we had been friends for so long, I had an inkling to this, so the decision was easier for me. But to a stranger who's not familiar with your work, I'll just say that you can't find somebody more insightful and more sensitive to what the person's going through, really.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. You mentioned the word comfortable, actually uncomfortable. Maybe just for a moment here is, so how would you characterize the experience in terms of comfort versus discomfort?
Well, it's often uncomfortable because you're looking at, deep-seated blocks in your personality as to why you're not where you want to be. So it's often uncomfortable.
Yeah.
On that level. Many people choose never to look at these things in their life. Um, but I believe if you want the most out of life, you have to uncover these things, air them out, and make sure they're not in error, keeping you from doing things you want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Great. So then sort of the final part of our conversation is, you now grad for a couple of years, I believe it's been since our work concluded, and I'm curious to ask, and I know it would be valuable for a listener or a watcher to know. So in the rear view mirror,
Mm-hmm.
What has been your experience since, as it relates to the work that you have done and we have done together?
Right. I think the level of self-awareness that I have now has made me, well, it's essentially a different person, a better person. Um, uh, uh, Level of anxiety over major decisions is much, much lower, if not uh, eliminated. Um, what you get out of this program is a framework or a deep, deep understanding of how your own personality works in various situations. And then you simply are free to use it to your advantage. And I don't mean in terms of, trying to be a salesman or anything, but all of the things that were hidden that caused you to do the things over and over again that you wondered, why did I do that? Or why am I not happy about that? All of those things you are now extremely aware of and have a deep understanding of, and they no longer cause you to make the same mistakes over and over again. Yeah, it's like an owner's manual. We talked about this in the work. I felt like this was an owner's manual. The owner's manual I never got.
Thank you, Ron. Much appreciated. And maybe just in closing, as we imagine, people will come out to the site. This may or may not be their very first touch with this kind of thing, offered in this kind of way by this kind of guy. There's that significant change, and there's that significant challenge, and there's choices to make. Can you, quite aside from even from the program, can you offer any advice for those who are, they're dancing on that threshold, let's say, between what was and what could be, and having some, fairly heady choices to make?
Mm-hmm. Well, back at the beginning of this short chat, we talked about the word humility. And I would ask the people just read and speak to you in person, and take a look at videos on the site from other people, and get a sense of the humility that you bring to your work. It would be very easy for you to put a whole bunch of razzmatazz stuff together and speak like a professional motivational speaker and pump people up and, do the walk across the fire baloney to try to attract clients. But what are you doing? You're just having open, honest, fairly deep conversations with former clients to expose the type of work you do. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And so, I would just ask people, if you feel comfortable in what you see on your website, then that's exactly what you're going to get within the program.
Ron, thank you. Very much appreciated. I always learn something when I'm in conversation with you, every single time out. You've taught me so much about my own path and my own journey, and it's the wonder of it. At one time, you're the teacher and I'm the student. I may be the teacher and you're the student as we move through this process of us heightening self-awareness. So thank you for being here. Yeah. I'm most grateful.
You're very welcome.
And we will talk again soon.
Okay, sounds good.